The moment you walk into a room, before you say a word, before you even fully register who's around you, people have already started forming an opinion about you. And this happens incredibly fast, often within just a few seconds. Not because people are shallow or intentionally judgmental, but because the human brain is wired for efficiency and survival, constantly scanning the environment for signals that help it decide what is safe, what is valuable, and what deserves attention. In this rapid evaluation process is driven by what psychologists call thin slicing, a concept popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, which explains how our brains make quick inferences based on very limited information. And while this might seem inaccurate, it's actually surprisingly effective in many situations, because over time the brain has learned to pick up on patterns, subtle cues in body language, facial expressions, posture, and tone that can indicate confidence, trustworthiness, or uncertainty. And these cues are processed almost instantly, without conscious effort, which is why first impressions feel so automatic and difficult to control. And one of the key forces behind this is the halo effect, where one noticeable trait, like confidence or appearance, influences how people perceive everything else about you. So if you walk in with strong posture and calm energy, people are more likely to assume you are competent and capable. But if your body language appears closed off or hesitant, they may unconsciously associate that with insecurity or lack of authority, even if that's not true. And this is because the brain prefers coherence. It wants to create a complete picture as quickly as possible, so it fills in the gaps using assumptions based on the initial signals it receives. And another important factor is that humans are highly social beings, and in any social interaction, there is an underlying question being answered almost instantly. Where does this person fit in the social hierarchy? Are they confident or unsure, dominant or passive, someone to pay attention to or someone to overlook? And these judgments are not necessarily fair, but they are automatic, because understanding someone's social position helps the brain decide how to interact with them. And this is why your presence, the way you carry yourself, often matters more than the exact words you say, especially in the first few moments, because presence communicates information faster than language. And it's also why people who appear calm, grounded, and self-assured tend to command more attention and respect, even before they prove anything, because those signals suggest certainty, and certainty feels safe and reliable to the brain. And beyond body language, your facial expressions play a huge role, because humans are extremely sensitive to faces. We are constantly reading microexpressions to detect emotions and intentions. So even a slight tension in your face, a forced smile, or a lack of expression can influence how you're perceived. And this happens so quickly that you might not even realize it. And then there's the role of context, because the brain doesn't evaluate you in isolation, it compares you to the environment. So how you dress, how you move, and how you speak are all interpreted relative to what is expected in that setting. And if your signals align with the context, you're perceived as socially aware and competent. But if they don't, even slightly, it can create a sense of mismatch that affects your first impression. And another powerful element is energy, which might sound abstract, but is very real in terms of psychology, because people are highly attuned to emotional states, and through a process known as emotional contagion, they tend to pick up and mirror the feelings of those around them. So if you enter a space feeling anxious or uncertain, that energy can be sensed and reflected back, making others less likely to engage. But if you project calm, confidence, people are more likely to feel comfortable and drawn to you. And this is why managing your internal state is just as important as managing your external behavior, because the two are deeply connected. And what's interesting is that these first impressions don't just influence how others see you, they also influence how they interpret everything you do afterward. Because once an initial judgment is made, the brain looks for confirmation, a process known as confirmation bias. So if someone decides in the first few seconds that you are confident and capable, they are more likely to interpret your actions in a positive light, even if you make small mistakes. But if the initial impression is negative, they may focus more on your flaws and overlook your strengths. And this creates a kind of filter that shapes the entire interaction, which is why those first few seconds carry so much weight. And yet, despite how automatic and fast this process is, it's not something you're powerless over. Because while you can't control how people think, you can control the signals you send. and small adjustments can make a significant difference, like standing with an open and relaxed posture, making steady eye contact, speaking at a measured pace, and allowing yourself to pause instead of rushing. Because these behaviors signal confidence and control, and confidence, when it's calm and grounded, is one of the strongest predictors of a positive first impression, and it's also important to balance that with warmth. Because while confidence earns respect, warmth builds connection, so a slight genuine smile, a friendly tone, or showing interest in others can make you more approachable and likable. And the combination of these two qualities, confidence and warmth, creates a powerful presence that naturally draws people in. And ultimately, the reason people judge you in 3 seconds is not because they want to label you unfairly, but because their brains are trying to make sense of you as quickly as possible using the information available. And that information comes primarily from your nonverbal signals, your energy, and how well you align with the social context. So if you understand this, you can stop seeing quick judgments as something negative and start seeing them as feedback, because they reveal how your signals are being interpreted. And once you become aware of that, you can begin to adjust and refine how you show up, not in a fake or performative way, but in a way that is clear, intentional, and aligned with who you want to be perceived as. And when you do that, those first 3 seconds stop working against you and start working for you. And once you see how fast and how deeply these judgments are formed, you realize that every interaction begins long before the first word is spoken. And once you understand that, you can't unsee it.